Good morning. I am honored to be here, and I'm going to use some notes to get through this. So for a brief explanation, my slides are generally very boring, very dry, but I found that when you dress them up with cats, it just makes everything appear better. So I hope you enjoy the cats while we talk through the talk today. Give me one moment. Adjust this. Perfect. Okay, so like I said, I'm honored to be here today, and we're going to talk about failure. And I've been through a lot, and so I'm going to give you a bit about my background before I jump in on some of the things that I failed on. I'm a native Iowan. I was born in Northeast Iowa. I went to high school in Hudson, Iowa. While in high school, I was part of the show choir, and I was also on a state championship basketball team. And I discovered that when you go to college, no one gives a shit about you being on a state championship basketball team. That was really disheartening. All my T-shirts were Hudson, Iowa state champs. And so that was a quick lesson learned in failure in communications. After college, I worked for a company that built Palm Pilots and components for Palm Pilots. Now, if you've ever had one of these things, this was the precursor to the cell phone that's in your pocket. And that company's right here in Des Moines, which is pretty exciting. I worked there for about a year and a half, and I had a longtime friend and longtime mentor come to me and say, I've got my private equity-backed company. We're up and running. Come join me here. And in a year and a half, you'll be richer than hell or out of a job. Well, it was a year and a week to the day I was out of a job. So I did not make my fortune on that company. The dot-com bubble burst. A lot of people in my shoes were out of a job. The tech market really tanked, and it was over. I saw at that moment I was never going to work for anyone else again. So I started my own business, building websites out of my home, and I did it for anybody that would pay me. Things went up and down that first year, but I was able to bring my brother on full-time, and we got a cool office downtown. For those of you who know the technical types, or if you are a technical type, we get approached by lots of ideas, the dreamers, the people like yourselves that have new ideas and you need someone to build something. And fortunately or unfortunately, I'm terrible at saying no. So along this 10-year journey of running this web development company with my brother, I took on lots of other ventures. The first one was an opportunity brought to us by the Des Moines Arts Festival. And the executive director at the time said, I need a way to manage my 350 volunteers. That project that year that we built for them was able to spin off the next year and turn into the business today that is Volunteer Local, that Kaylee talked a lot about. Shortly thereafter, I was approached by a marketer and a bar owner to start a company that did text message alerts and notifications called Catchwind. A little bit after that, a different marketer and a lawyer approached me with an idea to build a product for lawyers. Shortly after that, we had the opportunity to move into Startup City to work on a ticketing startup and help get that off the ground. At that time, a little after Startup City, I took a break from the startup world. I went back to work for that same venture-backed company guy and learned and cut my teeth on enterprise sales around enterprise-level CRM management. And then 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to lead the Global Insurance Accelerator. I jumped at that opportunity and haven't looked back since. So for context, I'm an Iowan, an engineer, an entrepreneur, and a startup advocate. So as you can imagine, when you have your hands in this many things and you're learning and moving along, there's plenty of failure along the way. And so today is all about sharing those lessons with you, the lessons taught by failure. Some of those failures are mine, and some of those failures are those of my peers. And I did check with the people that I'll talk about today, so we're not throwing anyone under the bus. As you can imagine, this is an extremely hard topic to talk about, not only because it involves other people, but it's the things that we did wrong. It's the failure. It's a great opportunity to get to talk to a founder one-on-one about what went wrong and learn from their lessons. But I can tell you a mass presentation like this gets really tricky. So I'm going to try to find that balance of giving you enough learnings and tactical things that you can take from this without throwing anyone under the bus. If you were hoping for some tear down and finger pointing and name dropping, you can lower your expectations right now. All right. So let's talk about founder divorce. Let's start here. I had never heard the term founder divorce until I worked at the Accelerator. It's a common term that accelerators use when we try to identify early on founding teams that are going to have any sort of problems in their communications. For those of you who have not started a company or have yet to venture off and start something, when you have a partner in that business, it's the same as being married to that person. They're in the company with you. They share the equity. You can't just take it away. Even if you started the company, barring any sort of special legal arrangement, you don't just get to pull that equity back the minute you don't get along with them or don't like what they're working on. So it's a serious decision to start a company and bring a partner on with them. I'm going to talk a little bit later about buyouts and some experiences I had with that. So having done all these different ventures, I've had my share of founder divorce. So let's dig in on that topic and what were some of the root causes. It starts with leadership. One thing I've noticed within our own startups that have gone through the Accelerator is that when you don't have a clear leader guiding the ship, you're destined for problems. In 2007, when I started Catchwind with the bar owner and the marketer, we had the trifecta of a perfect team. We had the technical talent, the marketing talent, and the sales talent. 3 really important pieces to starting a business. And we were really good at our own respective jobs. We respected one another's works, we stayed in our lanes, and that very first year in business, we did $250,000 in sales. Not bad for 2007 with a Des Moines startup that was using some fairly cutting-edge technology. I can tell you on several occasions when we sat down to talk with prospects about text messaging, we would spend about 50 minutes of the hour just educating them. We demoed one guy from John Deere Credit, and he actually paused the meeting. He said, hold on, and he playing with his phone, and he chuckles, and he had texted his daughter for the very first time, something like hello, and she wrote back and said, what are you doing? So it was a fun experience to go through that. But the problem that we had is there was no clear leadership. So we had our first major problem 18 months into the business. We had 1/3 of our revenue tied up with one client, a dueling piano bar chain called Hell at the Moon. And we didn't do anything wrong. They just didn't renew their contract. And that was a significant hit, enough to us to put us in the red. And the problem there was no clear leadership of saying, what are we going to do next? Each of the 3 of us had to make our own decisions of what to do. It was almost as if we were operating independently of each other and trying to decide who would stick around to try to salvage the business and who would not. So without that leadership in place, we didn't have a clear vision. I've only seen one situation where co-founders worked it out to share the leadership, and these are brothers. I worked with my brother. It's not my brother. We usually just screamed at each other. But these 2 brothers that worked it out had this complex series of how to handle the time when they both didn't have the same vision or direction to go. So if you're going to go down that path of saying we're equal shareholders, at least have a way to determine what things win. Because building a company is hard. It requires vision. It requires the ability to make tough decisions. The outcome of the decisions is what will define you as the leader. A quote from Kaylee that she shared with me while I was working on this was, the best leaders are products of their failures and not their success, which I think is very relevant to what I'm talking about today. Another quick story, this one's got a happy ending. In 2011, I met a company out of Cedar Falls, Iowa. There was 5 co-founders, 5. That's a really full kitchen. And so I asked them, I said, well, who's the CEO, who's in charge? And they said, well, we're going to share the leadership equally. And I, in my mind, I laughed. I said, yeah, not for long. And so I don't know the journey of this story, but if you get a chance, I don't know if Kate Walshut is here, but if you get a chance to ever talk with them, I'm confident there's a ton of valuable lessons in that story. The good news, the happy ending, is that company is thriving and growing and doing really, really well in Cedar Falls, Iowa, and all 5 founders are still part of the company. I wish I had more details to share with you today, but again, I encourage you to talk with them about what they did. By the way, I might forget to click things, which would rob you of cats, so if I stick on a slide for too long, just yell at me. Okay, so now we've established that we have to have a clear leader. That leader is typically the CEO, the president. I'm good with that title. You need to be able to identify and tell people, this is the CEO of our company, this is the president of our company. But what about everybody else? What about the roles they fill? What about their titles? I want to be clear in this little segment or this rant. I'm an advocate for titles. You need to give people something to grasp onto. It could be considered a vanity measure. It may help them feel good about what defines their role within the company. But roles are different than titles. And the problem is that if you get too far down the path of trying to fill people into titles, you miss the gaps that those titles don't fill. It's easier to identify gaps of problems that, it's easier to identify the gaps in your leadership and your talent if you work on roles versus working on titles. Don't squeeze the talent that you have in that person into a specific title. I think you're headed for a tough road ahead if you go that path. A quick story then too. For those of you who are solo founders or looking to fill some of those gaps, maybe you're a marketer and a salesperson and you need that tech talent, or you're a developer and you're looking for that leader, that salesperson. Finding a co-founder, as I mentioned earlier, needs to be taken very, very seriously. If you've never actually even hired someone before, you need to think of this in context of a hiring. Create the job description, review resumes, interview people. Don't just look for the next person that's looking to join a company. On 2 separate occasions, I had gaps within what I needed for a couple of my ventures. I had people that were interested in the company, and even though these individuals were perfectly talented, very, very capable of doing great things and have done great things, it was not the right fit for me. Foolishly, I brought them into the company. Now that's on me. That's not anything that they did wrong. I want to be clear about that. That's a place where I failed. I failed to recognize the role that this person would fill within the company and the mismatch of the role that I need filled. The title worked fine. It looked really good. I was the CTO. This is the CEO. This is the CMO. But again, that role didn't get filled because I didn't take the time to think about what my company needed. Of course, the downside of that, when there's a mismatch in talent, you'll have all sorts of problems within just communications of the company, trying to move forward, trying to agree on things. And as I alluded to earlier, when you get into that situation, you don't just pull the equity back. You don't say, oops, my bad. I'd like this back, please. I'm going to build this company without you. You're headed towards, unfortunately, some sort of legal event and what lead to a buyout. So before I talk about the buyout, I want to echo, at least endorse Chris and other lawyers in the room. You need a good lawyer. There's good ones here today. There's good ones in Des Moines. You have to find a good lawyer that not only understands the law, but understands business and understands your business. We've all been to networking events, and when you meet the lawyer, it's easy to see that as this black box of a person to say, you're a lawyer. You must be qualified to do lawyer things. Let's talk about doing business together. But the reality is we're all different people. They all have different skill sets. You need to still break down that black box and interview that person because they're going to be very, very important to your company. I hate to say it, but not all lawyers are created equally, just as all co-founders are not created equally. So take the time to find the right lawyer that's going to do your business a lot of good when they do their job well. The other thing that I personally encourage you to not let happen is don't let the lawyer negotiate on your behalf. Treat them as part of the team. Don't put them right in front of you in the negotiation. Not only does that cost you a lot more money, so for example, when the startups come through our program, we have a term sheet. We give them $40,000 of seed capital, and we take 6% equity in their company. And you bet your butt every year, those startups want to negotiate on that. Now, we don't negotiate those terms. They're pretty small. It's static. We do it all the same. But I always shake my head when they want to get on a call with their lawyer. It's a complete waste of their time because what that founder should be doing is talking with me, the Accelerator director, about what their goals are. What are their business goals? What are they trying to accomplish? Not the lawyer doing their lawyer's job, which is defend the company. So if you can take something tactical away from that, be the person that understands the legalese. Take the time to understand the language. You don't need to become a lawyer, but you should be able to understand the terms within your term sheet. Understand the terms within your operating agreement. These things are important, and you're the CEO or CFO or CTO of the company, and that's a responsibility you should take on. The other thing related to this is a buy-sell agreement. Have one. This is very important. All businesses come to an end. I'm sure there's a few exceptions. We've got some very old insurance companies in the area that haven't come to an end and may not ever. But most companies come to an end in some form or fashion. And certainly partners are bought out of that business at some point. Plan for that end. And so if you're at the early enough stage of your business and you don't have a buy-sell agreement, I'll give you a trick. Create one, but do it in the mindset that you hate your co-founder. So if you close your eyes for a minute, imagine you're sitting across the table from your co-founder, and imagine that person has screwed you out of a lot of money. They said bad words about your spouse, they kicked your dog or your cat, and you just can't stand to work with them anymore. This is the mindset that you want to be in when you create that buy-sell agreement, because in all reality, that might be how you feel when you execute against it. At the early days of your company, it's puppy dogs and rainbows, right? We're all feeling good, things are happening. It's hard to put yourself in this mindset of, I might really, really despise you, and I need to get you out of the company, or I need to get out of the company. For those of you, oops, I cheated, there's a free cat. So a quick story on the buyout side. So I was in business with a partner. We didn't see eye to eye. It just wasn't working. And again, not here to throw anybody under the bus. It was just a situation where the partnership was not working. Unfortunately, we did not have a buy-sell agreement in place. And this was very painful because what happens in that situation is the emotional side emerges. There's no instructions, there's no guidelines to tell you this is the step you take to get out of the business. So we floated around for a while on the emotional side because we were filling different roles, we had different intentions and expectations, and it became a real problem. And I have to give credit, this person brought in a third party who they were closer to, but I was still okay with it. This person had given us a roadmap to follow. Now, it had some holes in it, but I do want to share this with you because I think it could be valuable for anybody that's in this situation. The roadmap was this. There would be an originator of the offer, and I elected to be that person. So it was my job to draft up the offer that I would give to the other person, and that other person then had the opportunity to accept it or flip it as is and use it against me or for me, however you want to view it. What this does is forced me to find a middle ground. If I go too high, they're going to flip the tables and I'm going to be writing a check for a company that's overvalued. If I go too low, clearly I'm going to undercut what the value of my shares are and get bought out for a lot less money. As I mentioned, there are some holes in that because while all shares within a company, at least at the common level, are equal of value, not all founders are equal. You might have different roles you're filling, you might have different financial situations that you're in, but at least think about that as a template before getting emotionally charged about what you're contributing to the business versus what they are. Those shares are all equal. I will comment, the Catchwin business that I told you about, we are all a third each. And again, that comes back to the idea that we didn't, not only did we not elect the leader, but at a third piece of equity apiece, we were all equal shareholders. There was no discounting one person saying, well, you know, sales are down, I've written all my tech code, my shares are worth more. It doesn't work that way. All right. Hanging in there with me? So let's move on to something a little bit more fun. Let's talk about financials. Yeah. I think I speak for most entrepreneurs. We hate financials, right? We don't want to deal with this. We want to build our products. We want the excitement of the sale. We want to go do all these things. I don't want to count the money. You need to count the money. You need to understand the financials. For a business owner at any shareholder level, I don't care what your role or title is, if you don't understand your financials, please take the time to learn. There are classes online, there's classes around town. Go sit in a seminar, learn how to read your balance sheet, your income statement, your profit and loss statement. I'll raise my hand and say I wasn't very good at this. A company I ran with my brother for about a decade, that was the web development company. I was really, really good at cash flow. I knew exactly what we had in the bank. I knew what our accounts receivable were. I knew what our upcoming expenses were. And we were a two-person crew, so let's be honest, it's pretty simple to manage cash flow in a two-person company. But that was one area that I was good in. I was also good at looking at the P&L on an annual basis to understand where we were spending money, what our top-line growth was. It wasn't bad, but I still did not have my hands fully on the financial aspects of our business. And this particularly reared its head when we sold the company in 2010. The acquirer was interested in, we had about 100, 120 customers at that time. The acquirer was interested in the cash value of each of those customers, which is important. They wanted to know the longevity of the customers, what were they worth, things like that. It was the first time in 10 years that I'd stopped to actually look at the value of all of my customers across the board. Now that's valuable information anyway, but it's particularly valuable for those of you who have those pain in the ass clients, and we all have them. It's the client that when you get that phone call or that email, you just, right? You're sitting there like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. What was interesting is when we crossed the pain in the ass clients with the ones that were not very profitable, we found this segment of customers that we should have fired. We should have fired long, long time ago. And again, that's on me. This is things that we weren't doing to keep an eye on our business and what was dragging us down. And frankly, again, we're here to make money. What things were not very profitable? The other piece I'll tell you with the financial side is, again, someday you will want to sell your business. If you are operating your own books out of QuickBooks out of your home, that's great. And you should, again, I'm encouraging you to know how to do that. But having a third party, whether it's through auditing or running your bookkeeping, can be very, very valuable. As you go to sell your business, those books are going to be instrumental in understanding the value of your business and what you're selling it for, and being able to point and say, that person over there has been doing our books for 10 years. They're a certified public accountant. Here's the books. That will take you a lot further than trying to reconcile everything backwards. All right. So sticking on kind of this financial money side of things, another common place where we have failed, and I've seen the startups fail, is the question of, do you really, really know your market? Do you know who your customer is? Can you describe them to a T? I see this in the Accelerator quite often, and frankly, that's why they're here. So I can't hold that against those companies. It's one of the big pieces of what we're trying to help them accomplish, is that customer discovery, to be able to talk about who their customers are. At the early days of starting your company, your business is a pile of assumptions. And your job as that co-founding team is to prove and disprove the assumptions so you can focus on the things that matter and throw away the things that don't. We had some big assumptions baked into a company called NotifyWorks, which is now dissolved. I'm going to tell you a little bit of the story of where we really failed in understanding who our customer was. So NotifyWorks was a company that I was brought into. One of the gentlemen, Mike Caldwell, if you haven't met him yet, take a chance to meet him today. You'll be glad you did. He was one of the founders. The other founder was a lawyer in town who's a very successful and well-respected lawyer. And I say was because the company is defunct, but I will clarify he is still a well-respected and well-off lawyer who's done very good things in this community. And then I brought in the technical talent. So they paid me a little bit. I took a smaller chunk of equity and received some cash in exchange for building this product. And so the product was designed to tell lawyers when there was times to take action on the contracts that were sitting in a file cabinet. So I apologize, this is going back to 2010, give or take. And so there was technology, but nothing really emerged that said this is a digital approach to how we manage all this paperwork. So we were a tickler system of sorts, and we thought it'd be a really great idea to save lawyers all this time. And again, with a lawyer on the founding team, we had a pretty good idea of the pain that was being solved for, and that part was real. Mike did a great job with what he could to go out and interview lots and lots of lawyers. We through that interview process, discovered this pain was real. It was really something they looked at and said, yeah, we miss things, we forget things, perhaps this clause would have triggered something that allowed us to do a whole lot of billable hours. So the pain was real. And Michael also analyzed the market to say, what is software worth today to lawyers? What do they pay for other products? And we had a pretty good indication. And again, I feel good that we did as much homework as possible. When the build was done, we launched the product, and we spent $40,000 on marketing and advertising in various geographies, print and digital, trying to get people's attention. Now, it's all relative. You could argue $40,000 is or isn't a lot to spend on marketing and advertising to kick off a product. But when I tell you that we had exactly 0 customers sign up through those efforts, I will tell you we knew it was time to pull the plug. That was a quick hit. That whole everything I just described was less than a year. I think it was about 10 months. That's a really quick, fast acceleration to failure, which in some ways is good. We learned quickly. And the lesson learned here for me, again, as the technical guy, I was paid to build this product. And for those of you who are technical, or even if you're not and you're paying someone, that developer is going to build exactly what you tell them to build. You're not necessarily paying them to consult and give insight. But I'll tell you, as a shareholder, it was my job to provide that consulting and that insight. And so where I failed was my inability to say, hey guys, before we spend this much on the build and before we do all this other market research, why don't we throw up a one-page website, describes the product and asks for a credit card? Let's see how many people will actually give us their money to solve this problem that they say they have, and we've proved that they have it. That would have saved us a ton of time and a ton of money, and in the process of building this thing out. So my point to this part is understand who your customer is, understand their thresholds for what they'll pay for your product. It's very easy to go and build and build and build, and I've seen it before. The founders will congratulate themselves on what they've built, but they don't have a single customer, and now they're out in the market. I especially see this in the insurance sector right now that I'm working in. I'll pick on the coasts, those Silicon Valley startups that you all are not. They will go raise the $1 to $2 million on a PowerPoint presentation because they're going to take on something in the industry, the insurance industry, that feels like it's painful. And I get these calls from these companies that have gone to raise all this capital, and guess what? They can't get any customers. They don't know the industry. They haven't taken the time to understand what the customer's pains are, and now they've got shareholders that have great expectations, and they can't deliver. Take the time to get to know your market. Okay, so I want to switch to maybe more of a success or something that I think is being successful. So now I've just told you don't spend all this capital on your infrastructure and your build. there is a time when you do need to do that. And so for those of you that are further along in your stage, you've got your customers, you're past that point of understanding what your market is. One thing that we'll talk about is the feature set. What do we build to serve our customers? And one of the most common mistakes I see is the people that don't actually take the time to listen to their customer. So at Volunteer Local, the trick that we do is we implement every single feature that a client requests, all of them. Now, we can't do them in real time. We're doing our best to stay ahead of that. So some of those things get put to the dev list, and they might get deprioritized, and frankly, they might sit on that list for months, if not a year or longer. But the idea is there's no bad feedback from the customer. Everything is valuable. It may be bad in the way they've delivered it to us, and it requires some thought process on our side, but that's our job. Our customers drive our product development. And so for those of you who are saying yourselves right now, well, gee, Brian, that's not very innovative. How are you going to lead the market if you're not innovating? I would say the innovation is exactly that. The innovation is being able to listen to our customer. Hopefully you've seen this quote. If not, I'm just going to read it. If I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. I've seen this so many times on the LinkedIn posts that we all get, other conferences, presentations. The reality is, at least in my research, Henry Ford never said this. And sorry, Henry Ford, Ford Auto, where were we with him on that? He invented the car, okay, or modernized it, let's say. The problem with this is a really inspirational quote. I love it. I won't lie. This is a great quote. But the reality is, it's not factual. This isn't actually what happened. So I'm good with being inspired to go do great things, invent new things in your market. But just like you did in the early days of your startup when you invented something and you talked to your customers, don't skip that step next time just because you have customers and revenue. You don't get to skip go every time. When you are going to go after, invent something new, even if it's for your existing customer base, use that customer base to discover if there's any value. Kaylee does a fantastic job that when we do come up with things that we think might be valuable, before I write a single line of code, I make her do the work to go talk to those customers and ask them if it'll be valuable. It's so simple. So please listen to your customers. All right. Side story about myself. In 2011, it was a really fun time to be in Des Moines and be active in the entrepreneurial scene, and I give a lot of credit to that because Startup City was around. There were co-working and other activities that happened, other accelerators prior to Startup City. So Startup City wasn't necessarily the first, but I will say it was the first that brought a lot of people together. There was a lot of exposure. You can give some credit to the other startups that had cut their teeth in the years prior, but it was a really good place to be. And so here I am 7 years ago, a lot skinnier, and feeling good because I was called a serial entrepreneur. Doesn't that sound cool? I mean, come on, don't you want to be a serial entrepreneur? I hope you don't. I really mean that. Serial entrepreneur is code for you are too distracted working on too many things to focus on any one. And so I didn't try or attempt to become a serial entrepreneur again. That's come back to me not being good at saying no. But I do want to, there's a couple lessons here. One, don't read your own headlines, and don't believe every headline of your competitor. There's so much actual reality behind those headlines. Usually you read about your competitors raising money or accomplishing some great feat. There's usually so much mess behind the scenes, so don't get caught up in that, and don't read your own headlines. For me, that whole serial entrepreneur thing, it's been a great journey, and I'm here telling you about all the things that we failed and screwed up on. But it's not a good outcome. When we sold Diligent and you looked at our financials, we were on a really good growth path for the first 5 years of that company. And you literally can see the point where I started to work on Catchwind because the financials took a huge dive. And they continued until they plateaued a bit. And again, now that's a 2-person company. But I don't care if you were a 20-person company. The leadership, the founding group, the C-level executives, your attention has to be on the ball. So avoid serial entrepreneurship would be the lesson there. All right, so how are we doing on time here? We doing okay? Yes? Faster. Okay, let's tell this story. I'll see if I can tell this story in 3 minutes and 22 seconds. When I moved into Startup City, as I mentioned, I was working on a ticketing startup called Tickly. We built a platform that allowed general admission type events sell tickets. And what that means when I said a general admission is that there's no assigned seating. So today you're at a general admission event. You can sit wherever you want. Why that's relevant is that when you do seating, typically the platforms that you use today have that timer, that countdown, right? It's that thing that makes you sprint from your computer to your wallet when you're buying a ticket, right? You've all been there, running through the house, trying to get your credit card as fast as possible. Well, we didn't have that feature because we didn't need it. And that's relevant to the story here. So I'm very good friends with the guys that run the Blue Ribbon Bacon Festival, which are really good friends to have, by the way. And in the year that we started Tickly, we convinced them to sell their Blue Ribbon Bacon tickets that next year. The year prior, on a platform called Eventbrite, which hopefully you've heard of that gigantic company, they had sold 4,000 tickets in 45 minutes. So we were going to double the ticket count, and our hope was we would do that in about an hour. We would all be pretty happy with that. So that year, the tickets went on sale at 12 p.m. on December 12th, 2012. Well done, you're paying attention. And so that day comes, we're all set. And keep in mind, we're a startup. We'd never scaled anything like this before. We had no idea what to expect. And again, we're estimating maybe an hour. You know, the AWS servers, everything's all set to go. We're sitting in front of the computer. We're on Skype with the bacon guys. And when the day the tickets go on sale for them, that's a big day for them. They'd been tailgating all morning. So you can expect, there was a very jovial environment on the other side of that Skype screen. Of course, I'm over here kind of shedding my pants because it's like, okay, let's hope this thing all holds together. So it was a really interesting environment to be in. Well, 12 hits, and the tickets are officially on sale. I'm hitting refresh on the little query button, and voila, first sale. 3 to 4 seconds go by. Like, okay, whew, we got the first one down. Nothing's broken yet. A few more seconds go by, refresh. 15 sales. Hey, cool. Refresh again, 78. Refresh again, 240. Refresh again, 1,000. What we thought was going to take an hour to sell out the tickets for was actually 3 minutes and 22 seconds. So if you've ever seen Spaceballs, right? You're flying at ludicrous speed. We were flying at ludicrous speed, and as you know from Rick Moraine, you don't stop when you're at ludicrous speed. When something's moving that fast, there's no fixing things halfway. There's no ability to stop and say, hey, is this working or not? You just ride it out. Now, if you do the math on 8,000 tickets times roughly $40 a ticket, that's $320,000 that we were trying to process in 3 minutes and 22 seconds. So, of course, my anxiety, while everybody was high-fiving, and you think they'd won the Super Bowl because we just set this all-time sales ticket record for them, was to check the actual cash and the money. We used a credit card processor, and thank God it worked. We got the money. So more high fives. I'm feeling better now about where we're at. And so we're feeling good when the phone rings, and it's a customer calling to ask about their order. Well, that seems interesting. So me being the good little coder that I thought I was, had built into the system a notification that would pop up if anything failed within our system. So while we did process the credit cards, what did fail was the email component of the server. So just the technical for a minute, the server, you can send mail from your server, or you can use third-party services. Well, I was pretty proud of the ability for us to send our own email, so we didn't use a third-party service. Well, we got absolutely crushed with all those ticket sales and the emails that server was trying to send in that amount of time. So this is the alert that the average customer saw. That's my cell phone number, so now you have that. It was our CEO's cell phone number. I didn't want to put hers up there just because maybe she doesn't want the phone calls. But as you can imagine, the 8,000 tickets roughly represented like 6,000 people. 6,000 people got this message. So this is a really great message to give on a small scale. Like, hey, let's talk to our customer. Let's get to know what their needs are. Let's find out what broke. But when you have 6,000 people trying to call you because they're panicked that their Bacon Fest tickets didn't go through, you're in a world of hurt, and you're in for a very busy afternoon. So we survived that, and I will say, there's two major outcomes. One, outsource your email delivery. Be a little more vague or appropriate with your messages. So obviously, I'm joking with this one. You can take a minute to read it. But the idea is, understand the flow that your customer is going to go through. This is their experience. You need to be a good company to give customer service, but understand what you're up against. So there's my technical fail. So I've got one more story. Mike, do I have time for one more story? Okay. All right, so let's pick on our MC here. As you can tell, Kaylee's an adventurer. She has no fear. She will go out and experiment and try things. And we really embraced that when we interviewed her for this internship. We needed someone to be that leader. I talked about finding a good leader. Well, Volunteer Local at the time, getting that money from the state, it was something I was working on, but I knew with all these serial entrepreneur ventures, we needed someone to really lead it. And she fit that mold. And so the idea of having someone that was going to try new things and experiment was very exciting for us. We wanted that person to really just grab it and own it. So I'm going to tell you 3 things. I'm going to build up to my all-time favorite. But on her first week of the job, her first initial job was to get to know the competitive landscape, to get to know our product. We really wanted to take the time so she could get to know who we were. I exported several hundred customer email addresses and names. We had a lot of free users at the time, not a lot of paying users. So I gave her this list. I don't say it's like 600 people, I think, were on the platform. I give her this list of people and say, hey, let's start a conversation with these people, build a community, dialogue, survey. She took the initiative that day and emailed all 600 with all 600 on the CC line. Whoops. So we had a fun talk about that and how to use the CC line and blind CC line and maybe improved communication tools that we could provide to her. So that was a fun one. She mentioned the Pitch and Grow contest that she won. We co-pitched that, but we recorded. I was terrible. She was awesome. We won $2,500 from that. We took that money and put it into a marketing campaign. Now, keep in mind, these are the early days. Some of you might shrug and say $2,500. That was our bill last week for lunch. But that was a big deal for us in our company at the time. So she had this great idea to build these high-touch spa kits. They were beautiful. A lot of our customers are women, so we thought, let's target them and send this to them. So she put these things together, put $2,500 worth of product and shipping, sent it out, was all excited, kind of waiting by the phone, holding her breath, and she got exactly 0 responses. But that's okay. Again, the point is to try these things and do this. So here's the good one. Here's the good story. She was staying with this high-touch approach. We were growing. This is a few years later, so we're growing now, and we've identified a customer segment of endurance events. Again, know your market, know your customer. We'd identified that customer segment of endurance events were really, really good for us, and we wanted to scale that area. So there's a few fails within this story. The first is she went for the biggest customer she could find on the very first try with this. So she went after Spartan Race, based in Vermont. And instead of just reaching out to them, she thought it'd be a good idea to actually volunteer for the event, which is a great way to get in touch with someone. It's very clever. Let's give her props for that. But the downside is she's not actually going to Vermont to volunteer. So at some point, she's going to have to cancel that shift. But that aside, she now gets the contact information she needs from this event coordinator, and she emails him back. It says, if you will sit with me through a demo of our platform, I will have a pizza delivered to you. Free pizza, just for sitting through the demo. And he bit. He said, okay, yep, let's do this. So they do the demo. I'm sure Kaylee rocked it, but she forgot to ask for the shipping address for where the pizza should go. But being the resourceful person she is, she did her homework. She found the address of where this thing should be sent. She called up a local pizza place, got the pizza ordered, had them write on a Sharpie, thank you for trying volunteer local, and had the pizza delivered. So again, I can only imagine she's sitting by the phone waiting for this response to come in. And in comes an email from the prospect with no salutation, no greetings, just one single line that says, how did you find my home address? Lesson learned, right? Let's not stalk our customers too closely. So laughs aside, oops, there you go. How do you go? Laughs aside, here's the lesson from that. And this is, again, what Kaylee embraces, what I hope all of you are embracing, is to be bold, to go and fail, to try things, experiment, ask for forgiveness, not for permission. This is your moment to be great. Push the boundaries of what you think is possible on the financial side, the technical side, the leadership side. Find those boundaries, extend just enough past them that some things break, step back within them, and keep iterating. So that's what I hope you take away from my talk today. I hope you enjoyed the stories. Hopefully I gave you enough to dig in. I know if we've got some time, we can do some Q&A. Otherwise, yeah, all right. So I'll just keep answering questions until somebody kicks me off the stage. So if anybody has questions, fire away. I'll share, well, maybe you're thinking of your questions. I will share a story with you real quick that I think is relevant to you all and that fact that we're in Des Moines. So in the Global Insurance Accelerator, we have literally companies from all over the world that will come and participate in our program over the 100 days. And as proud Iowans, as proud Central Iowans, we often ask, what are we doing right, what are we doing wrong? I will tell you, these companies come into the GIA, again, from all over the country, all over the world, with very moderate to low expectations of Des Moines as a community. And it never fails that within a few weeks of the program, they are beyond impressed with everything that we have here. Between just the restaurants, the food, the parts of the local economy that make it good to live here, but the things like 1 Million Cups, Startup Stories, Tech Brew, these are all the activities that, frankly, they don't see in some of their other communities. So Des Moines is doing a lot really, really well. The other thing that I've learned through this, and this is something that comes up quite often, is the whole Silicon Valley. How do we become Silicon Valley? And there's a lot of, and I'll throw myself in this camp, that are just sick of that, of saying, quit trying to be Silicon Valley. There's a lot of people that see the values of that, like what are the steps we need to do? And I can tell you this, it's easy to sit here in Des Moines and say, why are we not Silicon Valley? But guess what? The rest of the world is looking at Silicon Valley and saying, why are we not Silicon Valley? So while it's easy to look at all the success that the Valley has had, there's a lot of amazing things going outside of the Valley that, if anything, you can think about it as we share a bond with startups from Toronto. We share a bond with startups from Oregon, from Miami, in that we don't want to be or shouldn't try to be Silicon Valley. Everybody looks at this the same way, and there's some really powerful things going on in other communities. And so I hope you can embrace that with all the good work you're doing here, is don't try to be someone else. Be the company that you want to be. So maybe we can talk offline about specifics. So this is a really hard question to answer because every business is going to be unique. I'll tell you, we had this just come up the other day with Volunteer Local. We have a customer that is going to send enough traffic to our site at our current setup will crash it. They load tested us without telling us, and so they took us down last week. So we are at this decision point of saying, are we the company that provides uptime no matter what? And we need to bite the bullet on the expense and the engineering and building out this feature set and all the things we have to do, or do we go back to that client and say, no, this is your problem, not ours, and you need to pay for this? The best thing I can tell you is to understand if the investment in the product and the feature will pay off later in dividends and other customers in the long term, then it's an easier decision to make that investment. For the features that get sent our way that we look at and say, this is really a one-off, and when we deprioritize that, the idea that we're waiting for others to recommend it. So, when I said we build every feature, the asterisk there is we build it eventually. We are looking for some level of validation from some other customers. One thing that we do, our retention rate is really high. It's a good retention rate. We view the sale of a customer, whether it's a $200 customer or a $10,000 customer, we think in terms of a 3x. We feel pretty confident they're going to be around at least 3 years. So when we make decisions about the value of that sale and what it represents in terms of maybe additional features or customer support or whatever we put into that, we think of it in terms of a 3-year timeline. Because we know once we get past the first hurdle of making them happy and giving them what they want, they're probably going to quiet down. And if not, that's that bad customer story I told you, right? You got to pay attention to those bad customers. But if that helps, that's how we think about it in terms of the investment and what is, this person just gave us $200, which is not a lot of money, but okay, if you take that times 3, that's worth 600. Well, that's a few hours of engineering that we could possibly consider to offset because other customers will appreciate this feature. So I hope that helps. Just, John LaMarche at VentureNet, all the people at IDEA, there's so many opportunities within the state. Again, I talked about these entrepreneurs that come in. A lot of the companies in our program are going to leave and go back home, but I will tell you the enticements that are offered by the state and the community makes them second guess that. And the GIA has attracted and had a few companies relocate here, which was never part of the plan. It's been the frosting on top. And that is attributed to the good work that the state is doing to provide the funding and the finances that they do. So let's hope our budget continues to function enough that we can continue to afford you entrepreneurs new opportunities through those types of financing. I think we're good. I'll be around. I apologize. We are in program with our Accelerator, so I won't be around in the afternoon. I've got responsibilities there, but I'll be around, happy to answer questions if you think things that you think I can be helpful. I appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.